My real name is Susan Alexandra Weaver. Sigourney was a name that I started using when I was 14, really as sort of a lark. And everyone called everyone by their last names, and I got tired of being called Weaver. So I just chose it out of an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel. And I never dreamed that it would stick, and yet it did.
The Alien movie will always be a classic. Visually, it is unique. The soundtrack is impressive, and it also introduced us to the incredible Ripley, an awesome, strong character. It was just a fantastic movie to watch. In this documentary, we are going to enjoy some of the interviews and footage of those years, like back in 1979.
Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
I think you have to be real careful with science fiction things because so many times they can just be really awful. I didn't have to read for it. I went in and met them. I went in and saw them again when I was over in England, which I happened to be over there for a holiday. I talked to Ridley Scott, and he was really fascinating. I mean, his whole ideas of how he wanted to do things and how he saw it in the monster and the relationship to the people and things like that. He got you very excited about it. And then I heard that Yaphet Kotto and Tom Skerritt were going to be in it, and I decided, wow, this is something I'm missing here. So I went back and reread it, and I decided to do it.
Alien, rated R.
Goes. Two of the most successful genres of the last 5 years have been science fiction and horror films, and Alien is both. It's a combination of some of the best space hardware since Star Wars and the most gruesome bug-eyed monster since the creature from the Black Lagoon. The movie begins aboard a gigantic intergalactic freighter where the crew is in suspended animation until the onboard computer awakens them for an emergency. The captain explains why their mission has been changed.
Well, some of you may have figured out we're not home yet. We're only halfway there.
What?
Mother's interrupted the course of our journey. Seems she has intercepted a transmission of unknown origin. She got us up to check it out.
A transmission? Out here?
Yeah.
What kind of a transmission?
There is a clause in the contract which specifically states any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated.
You got that?
Yeah.
All right, we're going in.
Yeah.
I think Star Wars kind of pioneered that idea that a spaceship, instead of being all kind of perfect and sterile like the one in 2001, would look more like a gut bucket, like that kind of a tramp freighter, and there's the crew on board. The beacon signal comes from a nearby unexplored planet anyway, and so space regulations require them to land, and they do in one of the movie's really most inspired scenes. They explore a terrifying planetary landscape, they discover an ancient alien spaceship, and they work themselves into a very tight spot while their discoveries are monitored by television back on board.
If you're setting out to do a thriller, and you can evoke in the minds of the audience, the strength of the thrills or the strength of the drive of the thriller, by showing less than more, then that's the best way of doing it. I think it's a combination of elements of the sound. I think the sound is very important, you see, in the film. And I think the sound evokes certain fears in the audience, and therefore I think they've seen, and they think they've heard, and they think they've witnessed. Really, there is one very strong scene, I guess, which is near the front of the film, And after that, you never really see anything.
You're about to meet this man, Jerry Goldsmith. He hasn't really done much over the years. He's only composed the musical scores for movies like A Patch of Blue, The Blue Max, The Sand Pebbles, Planet of the Apes, Patton, Chinatown, The Omen, Alien, Poltergeist, The Twilight Zone, Psycho 2, and dozens more, if that isn't enough. I mean, I don't know what more anybody can do. He's dominated great television and motion picture musical scores for over 20 years, and I'd like you to make a welcome. Here he is, Mr. Jerry Goldsmith. Say hello. Do you do your musical score and then, like, look at the film and see if it just fits for the mood, or do you have to write the music specifically for it scene by scene as you look at it?
It's scene. Well, they finished the picture. The picture is entirely done and edited because we write music to a tenth of a second. And once it's finished, then I do it scene by scene.
And do you have to, you know, obviously you don't do it all yourself, but you have a staff of people that work with you to do all of that? Just you? Just me?
Jerry Goldsmith's score is one of my favorite scores.
The more that the director knows where you're coming from, what you're doing, the more likely it's going to be accepted. And before we used, would sit down on the piano and try and play something. And I hear things in my head. I can say, well, the strings are playing this and the brass are playing that. And the director can look at you and say, oh, sure, I understand. But they hadn't the vaguest idea.
It didn't go over too well. And really, I had major disagreements over that. So then I subsequently wrote a new main title, which was the obvious thing, weird and strange, and which everybody loved, and I didn't love, and it was very interesting. Consequently, I kept getting kudos for years after on the main title I wrote for Alien, which was not exactly my choice, and the original one I wrote took me like a day to write it, and the alternate one took about 5 minutes to write.
Your film career has been built on a character that's not the guy next door. You're kind of a nasty guy, kind of a weasel, kind of a low-life guy.
No, that's... It's a very negative attitude, man.
No, it's not. I know, it's not. I don't have a negative attitude. It's the truth.
Well, I had a negative attitude.
Oh, you had a negative attitude. Yeah. Now, in this...
Beyond a certain age or that lacks certain sophistication definitely should not see the picture.
Do you have children, Tom?
Yeah, I have 4.
What ages are they?
17, 15, 11, and a baby, year and a half. The 17-year-old boy will love it. The 15-year-old girl, she won't like it. She'll get very upset, so she shouldn't see it. The 11-year-old, he's sophisticated, but not that sophisticated. It is difficult for me to let him see that. It will be difficult for him to see that picture. Though he was over there with me when we were shooting it.
Kenner presents new alien action figure.
Phoenix Glow! Quick, shut
No! Shh! Give up. Alien can't be beat. We'll zap him with the light. Don't, he'll destroy the spaceship. We've lost. Better find another ship. Let's try the kitchen. Another triumph for Alien.
Alien action figure, new from Kenner.
Maybe that's why I thought it would be. I thought it would be hard for that reason. And I remember thinking, well, this certainly isn't what you expected to do, because I sort of thought I'd play a character part or something in a movie. And but I liked the woman. I liked Ripley, and I thought that she seemed so. At least initially in the film, she seemed so unattractive. Not because she's a strong woman, but because she does. Her decision in the beginning of the film is an unpopular one. And I liked that stand. I felt she was doing what she thought was right, and I thought that was interesting, you know, to have to deal with that problem.
Did you always know what was going to happen, or was there the element of surprise there for the actors, and as there was for us?
With Ridley, you never knew what was going to happen.
You've got the beast, and then you got to go back to the egg. Out of the egg comes what we call the face hugger. And then from the face hugger, you move to the chest burster. From the chest burster, I always want an intermediary stage of a rather obscure thing that we'd see on internal cameras, like CDC cameras in the corridors, seeing this funny thing that's like a black egg wandering around, like on feet, and then see it unfold. We never got to do that because the Bond was breathing down my neck. And so we've got, 4 evolutions. Giger couldn't deal with the chest burster. He got everything else right, and he just kept saying, I can't do this, I've got too much to do. So we eventually went to a guy in London called Roger Dicken, and he and I fiddled about with what is this little baby alien going to look like that's small enough to be contained in the cavity of a man's chest, as if it were a womb, because it must be a birth. It would be a birth on a kitchen table. Just simple as that.
Wait a minute, this movement seems to have life.
Et c'est après ça que les choses commencent à se compliquer sérieusement. Bon, alors vous voyez, l'homme paisible qui est à ma droite, c'est Hans Giger, il est suisse, il habite Zurich. Si l'aventure vous invite à dîner chez lui, ne descendez pas à la cave, cherchez une bouteille de vin, il y a le monstre de Alien qui y est. Car Hans Giger est le décorateur de Alien, et notamment de la séquence que vous venez de voir. Alors comment naissent toutes ces idées, Hans Giger, là?
Oui, dans ce film...
Vous avez commencé à travailler d'abord des esquisses, des tableaux?
Oui, d'abord j'ai fait des toiles avec mon aérographe. Je travaille avec l'encre de Chine et puis avec le blanc. Ça donne des couleurs à peu près comme ça.
Allez, attendez, on les voit pas là, hein, mais je sais pas si on en montre. Voilà, on les a sur l'écran. Formidable. Oui.
Ce sont quelques dessins que j'ai faits pour Ridley Scott. Oui. C'est la décoration fantastique dans ce film. Il y a 2 décorations, comme vous avez dit. C'est l'un qui est fait par Ron Cobb.
Oui, c'est toute la partie spatiale.
Ce sont des choses de technocratie qu'on sait bien. Et puis l'autre, c'est une mixture que j'ai fait. J'appelle biomécanoïde. Ça veut dire biologique et puis mécanique. Une mixture, c'est un peu dans la direction de l'art nouveau.
C'est votre première expérience cinématographique, en tout cas.
Oui.
Satisfaisante?
Je veux dire, c'est le premier film qui était réalisé. L'autre que j'ai fait, le décor, c'était pour Alessandro Jodorowsky. C'était pour Dune. Et à ce moment-là, en 1975, il n'y a pas de monnaie pour faire des films scientifiques.
Oui, science-fiction.
Oui, parce que Star Wars n'était pas encore sorti, et puis maintenant peut-être il y a des monnaies pour faire.
Oui.
Moi je voudrais poser une question. Le fait d'avoir travaillé, vous avez travaillé longtemps sur ces décors?
Oui, beaucoup. c'était pas prévu. Avant, j'ai travaillé 2 mois pour faire des dessins, tous ces trucs. Et puis, après, je suis allé à Shepperton Studio pour superviser les choses. Et puis, j'ai remarqué qu'il n'y a pas des gens que j'aimerais bien d'avoir là, parce que c'est très difficile de transformer mes dessins en 3 dimensions. Et puis, j'essayais moi-même de le faire. Et puis, j'ai fait quelques modèles du décoration. Et j'ai modélé aussi quelque part des aliens. Ce sont plusieurs.
Et comme votre travail ne se limite tout de même pas à, à un décor de film, on va peut-être voir un petit peu aussi quelques-uns de vos tableaux pour montrer un petit peu votre cheminement. Et on retrouve d'ailleurs toute l'importance que vous avez dans ce décor d'Alien à travers ce qui va suivre. Merci.
The special effects were so good, and that you never had to wait for them, and you never saw, that it was actually made of, sticks and stones or something. Everything really worked and was convincing, so that helped the actors tremendously in keeping that illusion going of being terrified.
Anyway, it's a very intense scene in the film that I'm sure everyone has at least heard about, and most of you have seen. Was it shot as a surprise to everyone on the set?
Well, of course, reading the script, the thing is supposed to happen. At one point, we had seen sort of a mock-up of the little baby because we were shooting scenes that happened after that. So we sort of had an idea what it looked like, but, they said, oh, wait until you see the real one. What happened was John Hurt went down and he was, all fixed up at the chest and everything like that.
We won't talk too much about.
We sat in our dressing rooms for like 4 or 5 hours wondering what, they wouldn't let us on the set. We get down to the set, you walk on and there's this most horrible smell. They had buckets of offal in formaldehyde, and it was a very close set because it was that whole room thing there was actually what it was, and you were shooting inside of that. The cameras all had plastic over them and everybody was wearing raincoats. So we all got a little suspicious that something was going to happen. Well, of course, the whole chest was full of offal. And I was told that, he shot with 3 cameras, and the cameras were placed around the room so that they could get the initial reaction when the thing burst out and it happened. I was told I would get shot with blood just so we didn't get... I had no idea the jet was directly at my face. I got it, I got it square in the face. I flew off the back of the couch. Oh, it was unbelievable. The couch was jammed up against like a wall. I got stuck behind the couch. But those reactions were the initial, and nobody quite knew what was going to happen. It was really amazing.
Well,
today, I think with digital effects, you can do anything. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. And I think that in itself becomes a danger, because I think by getting a sense that it's not real, that it's digital, I think very often takes the fear factor out of it. I haven't seen a really scary movie in a long time, where maybe the explosions are too big for someone to actually survive. You know what I'm saying? When it's actually shot real, there's a sense of that.
Tom, when you finally saw it all put together the first time, did it scare you quite a lot?
I betcha it did. I knew when the things were coming, but I found myself doing this.
You too.
Doing a little bit of that, yeah. It's an intense picture. Now, I've been around film a lot and for a long time, and I'm sophisticated about it, but it wrapped me up.
I personally didn't find it to be that scary. I mean, there are moments in it which were the quick jumps, but I like psychological scare movies myself. Some, things that make you think a bit, or could it be there? I think they could have intensified that a little bit.
Of all the genres, I would have said that science fiction was the trickiest, the least enjoyable, really. There's so much waiting, and also with Ridley, at that time particularly. And Ridley was terrified of actors. I mean, the minute you asked him a question, you go and hide behind the camera, you know. So, I mean, it was his first major film. He'd done The Duelist before that, that's all. But it was endless. You'd be in full stuff, full makeup and full costume, and you'd get down there and you'd work out a huge track and this, that, and the other, and so on. You'd then there'd be a little conversation. They decide to change the whole thing, so you'd all go upstairs and you come back. And we did, I mean, 3-4 days in full costume, makeup, without doing anything at all, you know. So you can't say that that's particularly enjoyable.
But what an incredible
film.
film.
When we were doing it, it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
terrific
actual
film, I agree.
And it started from there. I then met the writers and the writer-stroke producers, okay? The writers who rewrote the O'Bannon Shusett thing were David Giler and Walter Hill. And the three producers were Gordon, Carroll, Hill and Giler, okay? And they had taken over the project under their wing.
In an earlier version of the script, I know there was a romantic scene.
Yes, there was a scene between Ripley and Dallas. And they just cut it. They never shot it. They decided to cut it because they didn't feel it meshed with what the thing was, you know.
And had presented it to Fox. And I think because they had made the presentation and had honed up the script and changed it in various ways, Fox then went after it. And for instance, they added certain elements, like originally it was 7 people on board, and they brought in the element of 2 women, which I think was a very good idea. But they nicely resisted the idea of getting into relationship scenes, you know, and all that sort of thing. I was hoping they wouldn't when I read it, and they didn't.
Yeah, I was pleased they did. That it didn't go that direction.
Yes, because that is truly a sort
Yeah,
of...
because you're really you're portraying a thriller and a suspense.
Sure, absolutely.
Sci-fi, and
and that would have raised other issues, and it would somehow soften the story, you know. And I like the idea of women functioning under those circumstances with the same degree of strength as men.
There were some sort of compromises made. I know the initial unfreezing of the astronauts was going to be shot nude.
Well, we sat around and discussed it and opted for doing it nude because basically it was like babies. They were coming out of the shell. They'd been in there for months. I mean, our heartbeats were lowered, and then all of a sudden it's like giving birth, and this thing blossoms. So we all opted to do it nude. We couldn't get that passed, so they decided, well, we'd all wear shorts. I mean, the 2 girls wear shorts. So we did that. Then we get down on the set, and they decided to stick Scotch tape around us. If you look real closely, you can see this. Because you lost 6 countries if you showed your nipples. And in a sense, it's a shame, because the whole premise of the thing, and the thing I think that worked really well, was the asexual aspect of the thing. The fact that there sort of wasn't a real femininity, or everybody was just, you know, the same. Nobody was after everybody's, you know, body and all that stuff. Which
people
was,
as opposed to
yeah, there were truckers in space. I mean, it was a dirty spaceship, and we were truckers, and we'd been out there for 4 years, supposedly. We'd been out there. Well, if you're out there that time, that whole thing is past by that point. You know, that point, you just have to get along.
Yeah, I mean, any film, one of the big battles or challenges, I should say, for any director is creating a convincing universe, whether it's a comedy, whether it's a drama, whether it's a love story. If you don't create the universe that audiences want to get drawn in and occupy for that period of 2 hours, you ain't got a movie. I think that's one of the hardest things to do, is creating a convincing universe. And Alien was right up my street because I was a designer, And I knew what to do. I think I was the 5th to get asked to make Alien, which is kind of amusing. But when I learned who the other 5 were, it was ridiculous who they'd asked. So yeah, obviously I had no idea who they were asking. And I was the only one on that list. I think it made sense. And it's because part of it was a design question as well. It wasn't really just a design question of let's get the spaceship right, let's get the environment right, let's get the alien planet right, let's get the alien right, because all those are monumental questions. If you're doing a horror movie, or you're doing a beast movie, I'm doing a beast movie, basically. It was a C movie that was elevated to A. Otherwise it was 7 little, what's politically correct today? 7 little chaps in an enclosed environment where the beast or the killer is going to come for you. So it was that. That's what it was. It was elevated, I think, by some good choices and a great creature, because the creature was unique and still probably remains to be one of the best of the best.
Ash, can you see this?
Yes, I can. I've never seen anything like it.
You get a wonderful sense there of something that might have been waiting there a long time for somebody to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they go on board that mysterious ship, and they wind up bringing back an extremely unwelcome guest on board their own ship, an alien creature that's the movie's most original invention. Now, I don't want to give away too much. I'm not giving away too much when I say it's kind of a cross between a squid and a spider and the Thing, and it's not real great to look at because its body is covered with extraterrestrial intestines, and the humans battle for survival. The alien oozes around the ship like a mucous membrane from outer space, and the movie is one of the scariest old-fashioned space operas I can remember.
Well, it did scare me too. I looked away and I was yelling with like a few other people, it's going to hit them on the floor, it's going to come from the ceiling.
It's in the next row, it's behind me in the theater. Right.
But I want to say that, you know, strip away all the beautiful scenery and the evocative weirdness of the picture. What we really have here is basically the haunted house film, only instead of a wild creature running around in a haunted house, we got a wild creature running around in a spaceship. And so
there is one moment, though, when the film does transcend just that horror, haunted spaceship sort of thing, and that's in this scene we just saw. As it goes on a little bit further, they enter that spaceship, they go inside, they find the alien pilot all desiccated from his voyage that might have taken place millions of years ago, and then they go into that big enormous cavern down below and what they find there and so forth. Gives you a real sense, I mean, from the point of view of art direction and everything else, that this could have been an alien ship. It's not just another TV or movie creation.
Certainly for a British actor, it is to be nominated is the most important thing. To win the Oscar would certainly be sugar on the cake, but it is very useful because it does give you a standing in America.
Delighted to present tonight the nominees for Outstanding Achievement in Visual Effects. And the winner is...
Thank you very much. The winners are H.R. Geiger, Carlo Rambaldi, Brian Johnson, Nick Alder, and Dennis Eiling for The Alien.
I'm very happy to have this. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to thank Ridley Scott.
People have called this Alfred Hitchcock in space. What do you think of that?
See, Alfred Hitchcock's more psychological. I wouldn't say Alfred Hitchcock in space.
Sirs, take up the course.
To Chertsey, noble lord?
No, to Whitefriars. There attend my coming. Was ever woman in this humour wooed? Was ever woman in this humour won? I'll have her, but I will not keep her long. What, I, that killed her husband and his father, to meet her in her heart's extremest hate, and yet to win her, all the world to nothing? Has she forgot already that brave Prince Edward her lord, whom I some 3 months since stabbed in my angry mood at Tewkesbury? And will she yet debase her eye on me? My dukedom to a beggarly denier. I do mistake my person all this while. Upon my life she finds, although I cannot myself, to be a marvelous proper man.
Get her up! Get her up! Get her up! Get her up! Get her up!
It's very moving for me. It's moving me so much to me, and to the world. A short story. During the March on Washington, I stood there with, at the steps watching Dr. King talk about his dream, and wondered whether or not I would ever see that dream, so far from my goal. And then about 8 years ago, I had some time off from homicide, and I went to DC with my daughter, who had played on around that ship, my oldest daughter, who'd run around on that very ship. She's a lawyer today. And we went to the spot where I was standing, and I was telling her how years before I had stood there listening to Dr. King's speech, and a bus pulled up with a bunch of children from Japan, and they got out of the bus and they ran towards me, and they were, I couldn't understand what they were speaking. I was speaking their language. But there was one thing that blew me away, was the fact that they all were saying one word: alien. And at that moment, it was so spooky because I'd realized that the dream had come true. I was now known all throughout the world. The movie opened the door up for women. Never before in the history of movies have we seen a heroic woman do what Sigourney did in that movie. And all other movies after that portrayed women in those heroic roles, and it was the first time an African American had been seen in a role like that. And so today we see women and African Americans in those heroic roles because of this man right here. Thank you, Ridley. God bless you.